A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
One of those controversial conversations coming over this next hour, some big things happening in the sex and gender space with questions around whether you can tell the truth about what's going on. Well, Christians, as you know, typically hold to a biblical model, understanding that God created male and female. But confusion is rife with modern activist thinking. Well, a name that has become well known to you, Kirralie Smith, who's been involved in a series of legal battles over her personal advocacy against the inclusion of transgender people in women's sport, is on her way to the High Court. Kirralie says she is going to ask the High Court to hear her case to decide if telling the truth is a crime. Well, Kirralie was placed under a 2-year restraining order for sharing a public photo and asking why are men in women's sport. She was found guilty of vilification for saying that 2 male soccer players in a female competition were men. Well, these rulings now stand as law, and she says if they're not overturned, they'll silence the truth for all Australians. Well, Kirralie Smith leads Binary. She says activists are trying to shut down her freedom to defend girls and women and using the courts as a weapon. She's one of the very courageous women who are standing up to the rampant campaign to de-gender Australian society, looking to hold politicians to account. Kirralie Smith, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you, Neil. It sounds like some dystopian novel that you're describing when I hear it like that.
It does. And you know what? I mean, for some it's going to be like, are you sure we're at this point in Australia? You have to go to the High Court to tell whether you're going to be able to tell the truth or not. Well, this journey onto the High Court, when did this dawn on you as the likely necessity?
Oh, look, Neil, we've suspected it might be the case all along, but we have to wait for due process, of course. And earlier in August, I found out that we had lost our appeal at the Supreme Court level to overturn the 2-year apprehension of violence order. And as you said, I simply took an image from the public domain. I didn't name this person. I reposted the image from the public domain and asked what I think is a very reasonable question, as do most Australians, and that is why are men playing in female sports? I lost that appeal. So the AVO was initially denied. He appealed. It was granted. I appealed. It was denied. So that one we are now seeking leave in the High Court to have that discussion, because if words are now violence and taking information from the public domain is considered violence, then how do you know? Where's the line, of what anyone can say about any issue, not just about gender issues, Neil? This is a very concerning issue for us all. And then in 2 separate cases, one concerns the same person. I've been found guilty of vilification, and that's for misgendering them by calling them males, but that's what they are. There's no evidence to the contrary that they are anything but males identifying as female. And again, this is truth speak. It's not just free speech, it's truth speak that's being penalised. Now, I find out on the 5th of November what the penalties are going to be, and it could be up to $200,000 in penalties, paying court costs, and issuing a statement that refers to both of these men as women, and that I am guilty of vilification for misgendering them. So these are very serious matters. After we get those penalties, we will be able to proceed with an appeal.
Okay, 5th of November, that'll be an important date, won't it? Finding out what your penalties are, because you, Kirralie Smith, are guilty. And, how does it feel getting that sort of verdict? I mean, it's not long ago we were saying that the process is the penalty, because
Correct.
Common sense was prevailing. And when all of these various ones, friends of yours, colleagues of yours, gone through the courts and usually found not guilty, but the process can sometimes drag on for years, was it a bit of a surprise to you that those words came out, you're guilty?
Well, look, I mean, it's a surprise in the fact, that it goes against common sense, truth, evidence-based reality, but not a surprise in how this ideology is captured, the political class, the judiciary, the media in particular in Australia. And so, when I sat in court, I was the only person that referred to these men as males. Everybody else, and you can think about who else might be in court, referred to these men as she, her, and miss. And so, when you are in court and you're having these discussions about gender or misgendering someone, and everybody is already making the assumption that these men are women, it makes it very difficult to think that you can win that case. So I won't be discouraged though, Neil, because the truth is there's male and female, that's it. No human has ever changed their sex. I don't wish ill upon anybody who has gender distress, anyone who wants to identify as something that they are not. They deserve compassion, they deserve healthcare, they deserve the freedom to express themselves, but they do not deserve to impose themselves in women's sports spaces and services and remove our ability to consent to males in those spaces.
And just clarifying here, because the photo that you shared of these two in the women's sporting competition, this was actually in your community, and you live in a regional community, and it brought to light the fact that this is not just something obscure happening in, some remote suburb of capital cities. This was actually happening in country areas, in remote even communities, and gave us some idea of just how widespread this has all become. What are your perceptions about how significant and how widespread the inclusion of men in women's sport actually has become?
Extremely wide. So one of the males was in my community. The other was in Sydney and was the lead goal scorer in a women's competition. And I took a screenshot from Football New South Wales. So both images were from the public domain, and I use those in my political advocacy because Binary, that I'm the spokesperson for, is a third-party registered political campaign outfit. We do have implied freedom of political communication in Australia, but apparently not in this case. And through the process of this began in March 2023, so more than 2 years now, I have had hundreds and hundreds of players, parents, and sports officials contact me to tell me that this is rife, but they are all terrified of speaking out and opposing males in female sport because of what is happening to me, and that they have been sent a very clear message by the Australian Institute of Sport, Sports Australia, and all of the peak bodies in this country that if they go down the pathway of opposing males in their competitions, then they will be referred to the Human Rights Commission under the Anti-Discrimination Acts in this country, despite the fact that our law actually says we can discriminate according to sex in issues where speed, sport or stamina is a contributing factor. It clearly is in sport, but community clubs don't have the money to face these sort of challenges, to take them on board. And it's a very difficult process, as you said. The process is the punishment. Who wants to go through this, particularly young girls who just want to play sport?
And the intimidation factor here. Forcing silence. So it's like forcing an ideological position on sporting teams and intimidating people, threatening all sorts of things, people being afraid then to speak up and say, well, my girls are not performing to their best because they're actually competing with biological males on a sporting team that they're up against. I think we've had this sort of discussion too before, the way that actually takes away any sort of incentive for young girls and women to actually pursue great, sport on the sporting field. How are you feeling about the intimidation, the fear factor that's being imposed?
Look, it makes me sad and it makes me mad. Neil, I've had so many young women crying on my shoulder because they've played sport their entire lives. They're now reaching those semi-professional levels, wanting to go into professional sports, and then encountering males in their change room, males on their sporting field. And it's absolutely devastating for these young women who do not want to be dragged through courts, who don't want to be called bigots or transphobic or any other nasty names they want to throw at us. So they support, obviously, what I'm doing doing behind the scenes, but feel very afraid and intimidated and gaslit when it comes to their rights, their fairness, dignity, safety on the playing field. And so we're in a real mess in this country when it comes to what should be something as wonderful and celebrated as women getting out there, being healthy, exercising, having fun, having social connections within their community, to many girls having to self-exclude, be worried about injuries and be threatened by their own clubs that if they speak out, they'll be called names and possibly even taken to court.
Kirralie, you're driven by your Christian faith, but there's also a biological reality in all of this. Sometimes we doubt the relevance of our Christian faith when it comes to social issues like this, but you're demonstrating that Christian faith mixes beautifully with the fact that there are biological realities, and if you want to make sense of the world and have people doing something that is going to bring out the best in them, you've got to be able to acknowledge both, haven't you?
Oh, 100%. You know, right from the beginning, the Bible says that God created male and female. He created them and they were very good. And science, you know, obviously confirmed that in later years, that there is only male and female. There's only those two sets of chromosomes and reproductive systems and hormonal systems. And, you know, it is a basic fundamental human fact, whether you are a Christian or not, that's been acknowledged throughout the world, throughout all time. But as Christians, we also know that Jesus referred to himself as the way, the truth, and the life. And if he is the truth, then it is our responsibility, if we say that we are following him, to speak the truth. And so I have no problem speaking the truth whatsoever, because it's his idea, not mine, and it's who he is. It's who he's created us to be, and I think that should be celebrated at every level, and that we do not need to be ashamed or shrink back when it comes to speaking that truth.
This is 2020 with Neil Johnson, helping you make sense of life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 on Vision Christian Radio.
Let's take a call. Kirralie, Kate is in Queensland. Hello, Kate. Welcome along.
Good morning, Neil. Good morning, Kirralie.
Hey, what are your thoughts here, Kate?
Look, I've been listening to Kirralie's journey over many years of listening to 2020, Neil, and I just wanted to call in and just applaud Kirralie. I know you are doing what's right, and as you said, Jesus said he is the way, the truth, and the life, and you're speaking up and standing up for truth, and just wanted to say our thoughts and prayers are with you the whole way. And I don't know if someone said it previously, but it just really reminds me of the fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes, just very much the smoke and mirrors, and even what Kirralie was saying just before about being in the courtroom and everyone else except her referring to these people, these males, as she, her, and miss, and just the abject falsehoods that are perpetuating here, and just really wanted to shine light, and just like Kirralie shining God's light on this darkness. And I just wanted to offer the encouragement, and we're all behind you, Kirralie. Very, very well done for what you're doing.
Kirralie, thoughts here for Kate?
Thank you so much, Kate. And I always get really emotional speaking with supporters because, you know, I will do this even if I'm the last man standing, I always joke. But I can't tell you how much it means to have so many Australians standing shoulder to shoulder with me as I do this. It really does empower and encourage me. You know, I think another real aspect of God's love for us is that he puts us in community, and that we really need to value and honour that community. And also, you know, prayers. This isn't a battle against flesh and blood. As I said, I have no ill will towards these people whatsoever. I pray for their salvation. I hope that they find Jesus, because it's the truth that will set them free. They will live in bondage and sadness, you know, whenever they're living in deception and under the lie that they can change sex. And so, Kate, thank you for speaking up. Thank you for your support, and thank you to all of the people who are sending me messages, donating to help me get there, because I have all the conviction in the world world. I don't always have the means to do that. But your encouragement and your prayers in particular are what counts, because this is a battle in the spiritual realm that requires the prayers of so many of the saints, and that just means the world to me. So thank you.
We're going to talk some more about the financial side too, because I know you're getting together a fighting fund, Kirralie. We'll get to that, but thank you so much to Kate in Queensland for calling through. Our talkback line open on 1800 316 316. Let's take a few more calls here. Bridget is in Western Australia. Hey, Bridget, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. What are your thoughts for our conversation?
Well, just wanted to encourage Kirralie. We think you're amazing, Kirralie. There's lots of normal people in the world like us that want to support you, and we definitely will be doing that financially too. But I just wanted to say, we've got a little bit of a situation locally. We're avid park runners down at our local Saturday morning track, and we've got a transgender it's a man trying to be a woman, I suppose you'd say. I'm not sure what the term is, male or female. But the issue is there is male toilets, female toilets, and family room / disabled toilets, and he constantly chooses to use the female toilets. So it's an issue because we've got a little group of, they call them the granny grommets. They go out in the waves swimming early in the morning, and they all are in there doing mass dressing, and this person will just wander through and they don't even know that this person is actually a biological male. And as someone who, uses those same toilets and change rooms, she's completely uncomfortable with the idea of this man having free access when he actually has a toilet that he could use and chooses to make a point and use the female toilet. So I just wanted to say there's actually lots of smaller scenarios going on all over the place, and you standing gives us courage, and, Charlie Kirk, everyone, we have to actually stop being spectator Christians and step up. So your strength gives me courage, and maybe I need to go to the council and bring this up, because as much as it's awkward with that actual person, and we have a conversation with that person most weeks and acknowledge them and all the rest of it, it's actually not okay, and we all need to.
Bridget, great thoughts there. Let's come back to Kirralie, because I can hear that Kirralie is empowered by the way that you're actually leading the way here, Kirralie. What are your thoughts here for Bridget?
Oh, Bridget, bravo, 100 claps. I'm so excited to hear from you and to hear that. I mean, I'm deeply sorry for what your community is experiencing there. I love that you are acknowledging this man as a human being who deserves respect and deserves compassion, but he doesn't have the right, he shouldn't have the right to impose himself on women's spaces without women's consent. And that's the big issue here. I do encourage you, Bridget, to go, take many people with you and go to the council. Issue. It's something that councillors and people in authority, they don't get spoken to, they don't get challenged, they don't get questioned on these things, and they need to be. And so you are in the right. He has options. He can still be involved and included in parkrun, but he doesn't need to be going into areas where women are already vulnerable, because what's the point of having male and female spaces in the first place? It's because women have a natural vulnerability, particularly in those areas.
Bridget in WA, thank you so much for your call. Let's see if we can squeeze in another one or two before the news. Adam is in Marysville in Victoria. Hey, Adam, welcome.
Hey, Neil and Kirralie, how are you?
Good.
Good, thanks.
Need to be quick. What are your thoughts here, Adam?
I'm coming from a former Aussie rules player. I used to play country footy, and just hearing this is just the thought of a biological male playing against females, because it's a full contact sport.
It happens. It happens, Adam. I know several girls who have had to face it.
Just the thought is diabolical to me.
Yep, I know a girl who collapsed on the field because she had a massive guy run up her back to take a mark, and she was injured and couldn't complete the game. And this is happening around the country in a variety of sports, and these girls are not able to speak out. Well, I feel they are able to speak out, but they don't know what their rights are, and they're threatened wrongly by their clubs into silence. And it's really horrifying what's happening.
Adam, thanks so much for calling through and just making an expression of that emotion around just how diabolical this all sounds. Kirralie, I think we should probably continue to take some calls from listeners who are concerned about what's going on. Let's hear from Dee, who is in Perth. Hello, Dee. Welcome along.
Thank you, Neil. How are you today?
Very good, Dee.
Good morning.
Dee, what are your thoughts?
I'm so proud of her, man. I'm so proud of her. May God bless her for what she's doing. And I cannot give in finance, but I can give in prayer. As Jesus said, even you be arrested, but don't be afraid. The Holy Spirit will speak through you. Please. I want you to know that your faith that you are taking is very important and is empowered me as well, because this is the same thing I'm fixing here in my workplace. However, most of the youth, I'm so proud of you. Okay, please. Don't be afraid.
Dee, let's get a little thought or two here from Kirralie, who undoubtedly is encouraged by those words. Thoughts here for Dee, Kirralie?
Oh, thank you so much, Dee. I really appreciate your prayers and your encouragement. And look, yes, that verse and so many others in the Bible have really come to life through this journey for me. And, you know, Jesus did say that in this world we should expect trouble and that we should take up our cross daily, that we will be persecuted and some will even be killed and they will call it God's work when that happens. So it's not necessarily fun, but there is great joy in serving Jesus and great joy in knowing that I am in his will, and that, you know, again, when we all stand together and we are believers together, then it makes it a lot easier to face the challenges and the trials of many kind, and we can count it all joy.
Dee, just before I let you go, you were mentioning something about your workplace. What are your concerns there? Are you seeing this even in your workplace in Perth?
In my workplace, I'm not allowed to preach, but unfortunately, like I said, I will not deny my faith. That is who I am. There's a lot of unbelievers there. They're Buddhists, and then I'm encouraging them how to, you know, there is good life, which means good health, and then peace, because some of them you can see them like they are looking stressful. And my way of coming in is just to share the word of God with them and encourage them how Jesus loves them. But then I remember some time ago I was rebuked not to do that. But I told my manager that, look, as the Bible declares, wherever I'm going, I'm a disciple, so I cannot deny who I am. But thank God, God stood up for me. And now even I'm allowed to pray. So prayer.
All right. Hey, Dee, look, you know, it's complicated, isn't it, in the workplace? One of those things that is sort of getting traction is around the issues of pronouns and things like that, which is, sometimes workplaces even expecting you to put down all sorts of things on your email signature and things like that. Kirralie, and you've got a thought here, because here's Dee in her workplace. She doesn't want to hide her faith. There's all sorts of issues around, ways that you do express your faith in the workplace. Sometimes we say, hey, hang on, hold back. You're on the boss's time. But what are your thoughts here for Dee?
Yeah, look, it is a very broad topic, and it's so fabulous, Dee, that you feel like you can be yourself and share what is true out of love for other people, and I think that's really important. In terms of pronouns and things like that at work, again, we should not have compelled speech. We shouldn't be forced to lie, to deceive, to engage in an ideology that is not based on reality, that has no evidence or scientific basis. So they're very complicated issues, and it can get really fraught, and many people have lost their jobs for doing so. But I think that we are in a day and age now where we have to really ask ourselves what's important and what can be compromised and what can't. And there's some things that we can compromise on, like you said, the boss's time and what we're doing, but the way we conduct ourselves in the boss's time ought to reflect the love of Jesus, because we're called to be salt and light wherever we are.
Dee in Perth, thank you so much for your call. 1800 316 316. You can send us a text on 0447 488 316. There's some texts have come through. Kirralie, such a champion in an era of untruth and woke. Another anonymous comment says, hello, with those who pretend to be women in sports, they're obviously taking advantage of the tribunals which are set up. My comment is I think that taxpayer funds are blatantly being used to promote this Orwellian ideology. Quick thought for that particular listener, Kirralie?
100% they are. When we see this in more than just gender ideology, but our taxpayer dollars are being grossly misused when it comes to this. And again, I say there's no scientific or reality basis to the claims that someone can change their sex. And the fact that our politicians, our judiciary, media, public servants, right across the board are engaging with this ideology is quite alarming. And I think the majority of taxpayers, particularly when they find out how extensive this is, are very upset about it, and rightly so.
A comment from Peter who says, "Hi Neil, I agree with Kirralie all the way, but we need to make sure that the church is teaching this. It is a hot topic that the church avoids teaching on." Have you got a heartfelt response to that, Kirralie? And, it's easy to make blanket judgments, but so far as the church, there's a generalisation, and every church is individual, and some leaders in churches are more able to make comments on these things. But have you got a general perception of what's going on in churches talking about these things?
Look, it's a very divisive issue, unfortunately, Neil, and there is, I hear fabulous churches that are standing up, speaking out and being really faithful to Jesus as the truth in this area. But unfortunately, I also hear as many stories from parishioners and people who go to church saying that their church leaders are hook, line and sinker with this ideology and put it under the banner of, we have to love people and be tolerant. But Jesus didn't ever say that. That's not love. Deceiving people, lying to them, that's not love. That is really cruel. It's very unkind. Putting children or anyone on pathways of harmful drugs and surgeries is not a kind thing to do. Forcing your female constituents to put up with males in their bathrooms, as we've already discussed today, is not kind. So churches really need to sit down and think about this, and even more so Christian schools is where this is a really fraught issue. And I don't think it's very complicated in the sense that there is male and female. The Bible's really clear on this, and so Christian school leaders and Christian church leaders really need to draw that line in the sand and be faithful to the Word of God.
Taking calls on 1800 316 316. Let's take another call. Becky is in Esk in Queensland. Hey, Becky, welcome. Actually, I haven't got Becky on this one. It's Al in Gladstone. I'll take Becky in just a few moments. Do hold tight there, Becky. Al in Gladstone in Queensland. Al, welcome along.
Hi. No one seems to be taking into account the fact of people who are born as hermaphrodites. See, the transgender factor is not just theoretical; it's already been proven. But they're trying to polarize it into people who believe and people who doubt it. When really, we should be focusing it what we should focus on is the fact of people who try to take advantage of it, and try to go into women's spaces, when really, even real transgender people would still have the right amenities available to them.
Al, you're raising some good points here. I'm glad you have called in. Kirralie, any thoughts here for Al?
Sure, Al. There is a biological reality of people who are either born with called intersex or hermaphrodites or differences of sexual disorders. But what I will say is that's very different to transgender ideology, where someone thinks that they can change their sex. Someone who has a DSD, a difference of sexual disorder, in most cases, and they're only about 0.01% of the population, a very, very, very small component. And they normally either have male or female chromosomes, and they may have some sex characteristics of the opposite sex. But it's very clear that they are male with female sex characteristics or female with male sex characteristics. There's only two, and how they choose to present themselves, again, is up to them. And, any human being has that choice, but it's the imposition of a lie onto others that we're concerned about. So people who have DSD or intersex obviously deserve great compassion, great medical care, provision in the community for how they're going to live their fullest life. And Jesus says that he's come to give us life and life in abundance. So I have no problem with that. What we do have a problem with is males telling us that they are female and trying to access our spaces when that clearly is not the case.
And am I right in saying this, Kirralie, and I've got Al on the line here, that there's real Christian compassion to people who find themselves in that, you might call it a grey area, intersex or hermaphrodite? There's real compassion from the Christian community on those areas.
Oh, absolutely, and it's, like babies born with half a heart or someone born, without limbs or whatever it is. There are unfortunate disabilities and differences that happen to human beings, and it doesn't change your value or your worth. You are absolutely valued, loved and appreciated as a human being, and that's, have great compassion for that, and we ought to have great compassion for that, but it is a very different situation to what I'm dealing with.
Al in Gladstone, thank you so much for your contribution to our conversation today. Time is running short. Let's squeeze in another call. Becky in Esk in Queensland. Hey, Becky, thanks for waiting.
Hi, good morning, Kirralie. It's been wonderful hearing this discussion, and I think you're speaking very articulately, very confidently, and with so much boldness, because it's so much kind of just nearly accepted now that they can be transgender and they can go into these different spaces. And I just think of all the arguments that would come up and hate even, that are against you for standing in your position, and just applaud you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I think of Philippians 1, which I was just been studying, and Paul was in chains for the gospel, and through his witness, other Christians were emboldened to speak out. So I can see that definitely what you're doing is encouraging other people to speak out as well. And in that's where my question comes, with all the arguments that you must come up against and the pushback, have you done research around what the drugs how they might affect men if they're transitioning to wanting to become a woman, and how that might affect their strength or their sexual urges or things like that? Have you had to do that kind of thing to speak, answer people's arguments and stuff?
Becky, let's hear from Kirralie.
Sorry. Yes, Becky, thank you so much for all of that. And yes, look, binary.org.au, we have thousands of blogs on there, and we've written about this extensively. I've written about this extensively. We also have fact sheets, we have downloads, we have testimonies, we have a lot of information on the website that you can go through. And it is really, it's a very important thing to have those tools and to be able to speak factually and clearly when it comes to this issue, and not to, we never want to call someone names. We never want to have no basis for the position that we've taken. And it really is important to be informed and to have that knowledge. And there are thousands of studies. And again, the reason we have male and female sports and spaces is because there are very significant differences between a male body and physiology compared to a woman's. And so that information, you can find a lot of that on my website, but there's also some great other websites out there that you can find out that information, if you're having those conversations. And don't be afraid to say to someone, I don't know the facts at this point, but I will look into them and we will continue this conversation, because you can find those facts and they're very helpful when it comes to these debates.
Becky, anything more to add?
I just want to ask, what do you think people could be doing in that to kind of let the community know around them their standpoint on this? Because I just feel, there's that thing, if everyone's silent, things just keep happening. But then, where do we speak and what do we say? So who do we talk and things like that?
Great question. Yeah, really good, Becky. There's lots of different ways. One is obviously social media and sharing posts like mine on, and then that can, initiate conversation. But most importantly, is to be going to your local members, your state and federal representatives, and having these conversations. You can do it via email, but I find it's far more effective if you call them, if you make an appointment, and you go and speak to them. And you can take some of the downloadable facts. Just stick to one or two of the points that are really important to you, whether it's children being put on experimental medications and being left with horrendous, irreversible consequences, or if it's a male in a female sporting team, whatever it is. Because so many politicians, they are the lawmakers, and they are the ones who... They're the only ones who can really change this in Australia. But if they are hearing from their constituents, from voters, saying that this is an issue and I want you to do something about it, they may be hostile, they may not agree with you, but it's really important that at the end of the day, they have to be able to say that I've had people come and talk to me about this issue. And at the moment, not many people are doing it because they feel like they won't be heard. But again, take a friend, take someone else with you, and make sure that you put your point of view across, because it is very, very important to do so.
Becky and Esk, thank you so much for your call. Time's short. A High Court pursuit. Now, I think you mentioned, Kirralie, this depends on some of the penalties that you might be up against on the 5th of November. That's not yet determined, not yet allowed. You have to be permitted to be able to take this case to the High Court. Is there a chance they could say no? I mean, I think there might be an outcry if they do.
Look, Neil, I mean... I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an expert in these areas, so I really don't know. I'm trusting my legal team that is saying this is where we are going. We're not sure about the High Court appeal for the AVO, but we're quietly confident that for this vilification we will be able to appear before the High Court. The thing is, it's so prohibitive for Australians to do this. As you've said, I've had to raise around $260,000 because there's fees, there's silks or, King's Counsel that won't even take on these cases until you show that you have the money in the bank. And it's a really difficult process, and one that, ordinary Australians can't engage in. I could not do this without the support of thousands of Australians who are enabling me to do it. But it's such an important issue that we get this corrected in law.
And you're not the only one, are you, who is contemplating the possibilities of a High Court pursuit here, because there's some other cases that have not gone the way of the ones we think ought to have won. Sal Grover and the Tickle versus Giggle, that's another one that might even find its way to the High Court.
Correct. She was found guilty of indirect discrimination, and there's been an appeal both ways by Tickle and Giggle, and that went before the federal court. That decision is also due around November, and if Sal loses, if she's found guilty of discrimination for excluding a male from her female-only app, Giggle for Girls, then Sal has indicated that she will also apply to the High Court, because we need to have in law defined what is a woman, what is a man, and is biological sex more important than gender ideology and gender identity. So our Sex Discrimination Commissioner at the moment cannot define the word sex. She cannot define the words man or woman, as she refused to do so in front of the Senate. And this really needs to be rectified very quickly.
Okay, so a High Court pursuit here. You mentioned a figure around $260,000, and you've got to have those dollars in a fighting fund in order to actually even contemplate making this a reality. And I know you've got somewhere in the vicinity of more than 100,000 email subscribers at binary.org.au. And there's an encouragement for listeners there to go to binary.org.au, become one of those subscribers and get some regular updates. You might be desperate to actually keep abreast of what's going on here, keep those updates coming in around what's happening with Kirralie Smith. A $263,000 goal here. Can people make a donation on the Binary website, Kirralie?
They absolutely can. It's binary.org.au/donate. And if you prefer to to donate via direct debit. I can also give you our bank details. But I've been so encouraged, Neil, in just, the 10 or 12 days since we've started this appeal. We're not halfway quite there yet, but we're well on the way. And it's just been so incredible speaking to many of the donors and thanking them for their generosity, because, again, I can only do this with the generous support of those who have the means. I have the conviction, they have the means, and so we're going to do this together.
Well, there's no other person I can think of who'll best represent a Christian and biological view before the High Court than Kirralie Smith, and you might have ascertained that too with the way she's so articulate around these sorts of issues. You might want to be a supporter, binary.org.au. To support that fighting fund, to get on the email subscribers list, to keep abreast of what's going on with this very, very significant happening, the pursuit of the High Court. And of course, November the 5th, it rates as a pretty important date because penalties are going to be announced for Kirralie Smith around the convictions that she has come up against with these various accusations that have happened in these lower courts. Well, Kirralie Smith, thank you so much for taking some time to share this update with listeners today. I know there'll be listeners who'll be praying for you and expecting some good things, and some are just hearing this basically for the first time thinking, how did we get to this point? But hey, you're a champion for the cause. Thank you so much for taking some time to share your heart with our listeners today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil. I always appreciate the time that you give me. It means the world to me. Thank you.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.